The next step is to take this code and convert it in a way that we can reuse this code. So let's create a new class, and we'll call it tax lookup DAO. I will create a package called DAO and put it in there. Let's click on Finish. And I want to be able to return the taxes based on finding it by code. That's one way. Let's just return 0 by default. And of course, this is returning a float. And public float find by name, string name. The data that I will be executing is basically retrieving only 50 rows. So what I want to do in this example, I just want to actually run the code only one time, meaning that I want to run the SQL statement one time and keep all this data basically in a hash map. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to create a static block here. And let's create a hash map of string, and we're going to return a float. Map new hash map string and float. Hash map has to be imported. Let's import it and save it. Okay, so the next thing now is to connect to the database. We've done all that work here, so I'm going to just grab most of this information. I'll just copy the URL to the database right there. While I'm here, I'm going to make this also private and static. And then I will go here and just get all the code that we need. So this code retrieves the data from the database. Now in this example, we're just displaying the data to the screen. I want the user that's going to be able to use this database to have access to the data. So what we're going to do is we're going to put it into a hash map, and we're going to keep the data there. So the next step here is I'm going to create a map here and say put, and then I'll put here the state code in this example, and then I'll put the taxes that they paid. I'll copy this line, and I'll now also do an entry also for state name. So now this map will contain about 102 rows, one with the state code and the taxes, the other with the state name and the taxes. I'll get rid of this because I don't want this to appear in the console. So let's do that. Let's save it. Now this data is in the map. Now for me to get the data from the map, I will just say here map get and put code there. That should be able to find the code. And remember, that same map contains 102 rows, and one has to deal with the name, and the other one has to deal with the name and the code. Now let's run some code to actually execute this. So we need a driver. Let's right click here, say new class. I'll call this driver for tax lookup DAO. put an underscore here. Public static void main. Let's get rid of this to do. And let's create a string. And I'm going to make this an array. And that array, I just want to put in a couple of values here. I'm going to put in here AL, which is the code for AL. Okay. What else? We'll put in AK. I'll put here state codes. FL for Florida. CA for California. CO for Colorado. And let's do one CT for Connecticut. Then going to create an array, Java 8 style. I'll say arrays. I'm sorry, not an array, a loop. Arrays, stream, state codes for each. And when I'm iterating over this array, this E could be any variable name. In fact, just to keep it simple, I'll call it state. This represents the state in each one of these rows. So this is your array. State will have either Alaska, AK here for Alaska. Sorry, this is Alabama, and then Connecticut. So what I want to do then here is on purpose, I will do this. I will bring up the tax lookup DAO, DAO, new, and I will say here DAO, tax lookup DAO. And we're going to say here string, not string, I'm sorry, float taxes, tax. I'll say DAO find by code, and that code here is going to be state. And then we're going to do a sys out. In fact, I'll do a sys format. That way it's easier for me to write this sentence. I'll say here code is S and taxes, tax is also S. I then can put state here and tax there. This will replace the state, and this one will be replaced by the tax. I'll do /R here for a line break. Save it, and let's hope that this executes correctly. If you right-click here and do a run as Java application, notice that this code is working. So now we have this reusable data access object, and it's returning us the data. Now remember, the reason that we made this static is we want this to be loaded once. Notice here that I'm instantiating the class in the loop. So I want you to realize this is being instantiating at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But there's only one version of this data, because this data that you see here in hash map is static. So again, we are instantiating 6 times. Just to make sure you believe me, what I want you to do here is I'm going to create a constructor. And remember, constructor is a special function that happens every time you do the new, use the new operator. So I'm going to say here sys out DAO layer instantiated. That way you can see that it's happening. And then I will, here in this one, sys out loading database information. So based on the fact that this is static, this will load only one time. Well, this should get instantiated about 6 times. If I go back to the driver, let's run this again. And again, notice that this class, the data was loaded only one time, and the DAO layer was instantiated several times. So please try to emulate this exercise and see if you can get that working.